What is going on? And welcome you from half court for today. I am your host, credentialed Pistons reporter Sean Murphy, alongside Marquette's movement shooter and the man who was in the building for the franchise record tying 13th game in a row, Marquette's movement shooter, Troy Sergey. Troy, you know the Pistons won again?
Dude, I cannot believe they won again. Well, actually, I can believe it because, man, this team is good. And they're fun to watch. They're energetic. They're fast-paced. They're able to score the ball. They play really scrappy, competitive defense. It was a great night, Sean, in Indianapolis. A lot of Pistons fans traveled down for the game. And although the Pacers had a good run in the fourth quarter, it was ours from really the first 5 minutes of the game. We really held them good, and it was a great opportunity even for like warm-ups. It was fun to see the guys come in and really be locked in from the start of the game, and it was great, Sean. It was an awesome experience. I'm so glad I had the opportunity to watch this team. I don't get to watch them very often in person, but to see them win 13th in a row, really special for my fandom.
I was going to say, was the last one that you had been to opening night in 2024?
No, I went to one game last year here in Indy.
Okay.
But yeah, other than that, before that was opening night 2023, actually. So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
And we thought things were going to be really different at that time. But anyway, that's a whole different streak that we don't have to talk about because there's a good one on the horizon here. Another record-breaking streak with the exact same group. If you would have told me, Troy, in 2023 that the same core nucleus was going to break the record for the longest losing streak and potentially break the record for the longest winning streak in Pistons history, don't know if I would have believed you, but that's where we're at. And let's just call it the way it is. That Pacers win was probably their least impressive win of the season. Definitely their least impressive win of the streak. But the thing that impressed me about the win, and this is something you didn't really get to see because you were at the game, but Cade talked about how much the streak meant, but at the same time, he acknowledged and he said, I don't like how we got this one. I don't like how we played at the end. And JB and Cade both, before even Cade fully even heard what JB said, pretty much said, we got to lock in and get in the film room and get to practice tomorrow. So even I think that's if you want to look at the marking of a great team, it's a team that just potentially, just tied a franchise record, is 15-2, is all things pointing upwards, but they're still not satisfied in the slightest.
Right. And I think that shows a lot of leadership in the locker room. I think that shows leadership, obviously, on the coaching end. And, I think when you talk about our core nucleus, these are high character guys, right? These are guys that live and breathe basketball as well. They're competitors. And, when you look at, the competitive teams that the Pistons have had in the past, and even just the more modern competitive teams that are in the NBA right now, you think of just kind of how, the past couple of years, just kind of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum's mentality, going into games. And, I know Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Those guys, those duos, are really, really competitive, but at the same time too, they're very detail oriented guys. And the fact that we have some on our roster, that's pretty exciting too, because it's the NBA. To get a win in the NBA, it's worth celebrating, especially with the guys in the locker room that we have that have had many nights going into the locker room after a game where the outcome was a loss. So to have that mentality, even when the outcome is a win, these guys really care about the game, and they really care about not just the wins in the win column, but playing the basketball the right way. And if you remember back in the going to work days, Larry Brown's big thing was always, playing basketball the right way. And, this team really is playing the right way. I know, Sean, a couple tweets on X you had this weekend of it's not just the Pistons winning games, but it's how they're winning the games, right? The bully ball down low, the scrappiness on the defensive end, their fair share of 3-pointers, but nowhere near some of the other teams in the league, their 3-point attempts.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you want to look at the Pistons 3-point shooting attack, it's essentially just Duncan Robinson. If we just want to call a spade, like you've had Dennis Jenkins and Karis LeVert coming to hit threes at times. But when you look at the way that this team gets their bread and butter, for a lack of better terms, it's through it's through like getting to the paint. This team is 26th in 3-pointers made, 28th in 3-pointers attempted. So this is a group that is zagging, when the league is zigging. And and quite frankly, like, I think that's a good thing, because I think when you look at the fact that this team is able to dominate the way that they are without a reliance on the 3-point ball, I mean, just imagine when they do get some additional shooting in this lineup in some capacity. So, I think there's a lot to be impressed by. And I think, like, there's been a lot of attention, rightfully so, towards Jalen Duren. There's been a lot of attention, rightfully so, towards Cade Cunningham. Been a lot of attention, rightfully so, towards JB Bickerstaff. But a couple of guys I kind of want to highlight tonight are Asar Thompson and Ron Holland. The defensive prowess that they're getting from those two wings. Ron Holland in particular, just from tonight. Can I read you a stat line just to show like how awesome this is? Now mind you, he had 0 points, didn't attempt a single shot, but in his 11 minutes, he had 3 steals, 1 block, 3 assists, 3 rebounds. 11 minutes.
That's great.
Just came in, was just an absolute scrappy mother on the defensive side of the ball, was causing jump balls, was making life just absolutely uncomfortable for players on the other side of the court. And even like with Ron Holland, that Ryan Rollins performance the other night, where he just made Ryan Rollins look like he was in a torture chamber. Like, he looked like a dejected human by the end of that game, having to go up against Asar. These guys are demoralizing teams on the defensive side of the ball.
Right. And that's awesome, because I mean, the Pistons put up 122 points tonight. I think that's what I remember. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we don't win that game unless Ron Holland played like that, right? I mean, Ron Holland helped us win that game, a game we scored 122 points in, but never contributed 1 point to those 122. I mean, that just shows you we're a deep roster, but everyone contributes in their own way. And when you look at a roster like ours, especially young guys, the biggest cancer that can happen to a young core is the egos. And Sean, I don't see it. I don't see any of that at all with our team.
No, if anything, I think one thing that really stands out about the Pistons is how much guys are happy for each other. Like when Ron Holland came out of the game towards the beginning of the fourth quarter, even though he didn't score a single point, guys literally were standing up and cheering for him when he came back to the bench. When after the last game in Milwaukee, they specifically gave the belt to J.I. and Cade talked about how he could get emotional because he was so proud of the performance that Jaden Ivey had. I mean, this is a group that legitimately plays for each other and legitimately, wants to win together. And I think that kind of just stems into the fact and just into this conversation where, look, obviously in sports, there's an emotional element that comes with being a fan. You generally speaking, in the world of sports, if you really don't have to make a major move, you normally want to keep the guys you have in house together, because you normally want to see the guys you have win. But the Pistons being the hottest team in the league, being 15-2, being this breakout story in the league, young budding players could, and especially with how weak the Eastern Conference is, relatively speaking, is this an opportunity for the Pistons to go make a move? Guys like Lauri Markkanen keep getting brought up. Guys like Anthony Davis are now getting brought up. There's players throughout the league. Like I've brought up the idea of Jaren Jackson before on this podcast. However, as this winning streak goes on, my bad, I slipped into 2023 for a second somehow. As this winning streak rolls on, the more this Pistons team strings together good basketball, even though like a night like tonight, it wasn't pretty, even though we acknowledged this team is 15-2, when they're 26th in the league in 3-point shots. Even with all of that, I still think there's a lot of merit to allowing this team to see this season through. Because what if, Troy? What if this group still makes it to the finals? What if this group like pushes OKC to the limit? Not saying this group is going to win a title.
Right.
But if you're talking about making the best move for this organization, what better equips a GM to make a trade than allowing a group to see a full season, like breakout season through, like OKC did with Josh Giddey a couple years ago, like Houston did with Jalen Green last season.
Right. And I think you nailed it with that of waiting the season out, right? I mean, the NBA season is long. 82 games is a pretty darn good sample size. And sometimes 20 and 40 games doesn't tell you the huge picture. It can paint you a pretty darn accurate one, but sometimes you need that 82 to get the full landscape of what you have in talent, in-house. And yeah, I'm with you there because
but more importantly, Troy, not just that 82, it's that potential 16, 20 plus games that you add on top of that in the playoffs, where especially with elevated stakes, with elevated expectations, with just with their elevated level of play, that's when you're really going to see what you really need to advance.
Right. Absolutely. And you think too, like, what's the better scenario? The Pistons getting bounced in the second round with a team like this, where then you can say, okay, we can make adjustments then in the off season, or, going all in on a player and that player only gives you, a first round exit, then you're really screwed, right? You want to see it out to then boost up even some trade potential too, some trade candidates as well. I mean, you want your guy. I mean, the better you play in the regular season, the more your trade stock goes up too. So that's something that the Pistons certainly can be reminded of, because there's no higher stock for a player than high production, into the regular season and into the playoffs too, because there's only a short window as we talked about many times, for players at their peak, but also there's only a short window amount of time to get that right player and to be sure that you have a right player in your house that you're building around.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's look at a couple teams, for example. I tweeted out today a couple examples. I tweeted out, the pictures of Alex Caruso and Kevin Durant as the example of when teams waited to make the right move to take them to the next level. And I also tweeted a photo of two teams who maybe jumped the gun. One of them being Sacramento with Domantas Sabonis. The other is Desmond Bane with Orlando. And I think if you really want to look at a true trade to look at like a true warning case for the Pistons, albeit still pretty early in the season. I'm not sure how much you've watched of the Orlando Magic, Troy, but they look kind of dog shit at times. And, especially with that level of trade that they made, they gave up 3 or 4 first round picks. If that's what the Pistons, if that's what people are talking about, what the Pistons doing, especially with friend of the show, Jake Fisher, reporting that Utah would want Asar Thompson in a Lauri Markkanen trade. Like, if you're giving up Asar Thompson in a move this season, it better be to win a title. And I'm sorry, I don't think adding Lauri Markkanen to this team and removing Asar Thompson makes them any better than what they are.
Right. I'm totally with you. And how many teams make those mistakes of they get excited and they trade away a great young ascending player, right? Not descending, ascending, and get kind of put all your chips in one basket. And yeah, as much as I've been impressed with Lauri Markkanen in the past year or two, I don't think he's someone you put all your chips in to go for. And yeah, I mean, Asar Thompson, he's too valuable to the core already, right? I mean, he's impacting winning now. And
Yep.
when you're on a winning streak like we're at, and we know that a huge reason that is because of a guy like Asar Thompson, you don't want to get rid of one of those like huge puzzle pieces that's making it all work.
Well, and it's also looked a lot like at times, like when you look at like the weaknesses of this Pistons team, right? Because even though they're 15-2, that doesn't mean that they're not still a fundamentally flawed basketball team. Like I still think you and I would say that even with how they're playing today, I don't think either you or I really, if we're just getting down to planet Earth, gun to our head, would either you or I right now pick the Pistons to come out of the Eastern Conference today?
Yeah, it's still way too early.
But would you? Yes or no?
No.
Exactly. So, like that's just the reality of it. So, even with that, like there's still like areas where this team can improve, and I think one area where you really see this team, struggle is when they're not forcing turnovers, when they have to play in the half court offense, and when guys outside of Cade Cunningham can't make a play. And that's what almost cost the Pistons tonight in Indianapolis. And I think that's why there's real merit to seeing where Jaden Ivey is at the end of this season. But also, if you're going to trade away a Jaden Ivey, don't do it because you're making a guess that someone you could go out in the market can make you better based off of what you've seen 50 games into a season. Make that trade because you saw Jaden Ivey fall short in a playoff series. Make that trade because you saw Jaden Ivey in high elevated playoff moments show you that he's not the right piece alongside this core. Allow him to get that opportunity, come back from this injury, and let's see what this group is at full strength before we discuss any altering moves, especially when they are off to this historic level start. This is a group that is allowed, in my opinion, based off what they've done, to see this season through, especially if they're still a top 2-3 seed in the East come the trade deadline.
I think those are all excellent points, Sean. And kind of going off topic a little bit, but talking about the one guy that you just mentioned here, Jaden Ivey. I'm sure Pistons fans are curious to hear just your thoughts, Sean, on just the two little short game sample sizes that we had from him against the Bucks in Milwaukee, and then tonight in Indy.
Yeah. So obviously Jaden Ivey, back in the lineup, but not necessarily in full force. Still kind of working his way back into the rotation, which I think is the right move as far as, the best way to bring Ivy back. There were moments in both games where I think you could definitely see the rust, and you could see just Ivy just kind of getting his timing back. That's one of the biggest things that we've seen just in general. Just that I think one of the things with Ivy's game where we just talked about like slowing down and, like his pace and rhythm and things like that. But that's just when you haven't played basketball for almost an entire calendar year, that is a really tough thing on anybody, especially a guy who already hadn't played a ton of basketball before that point. But having said that, for his first two games, if I were to give a letter grade to it, I'd give it like a B+ A- as far as what we've seen. Like tonight, there was some gimme, layups at the rim. I would have loved him to see, to finish on, but he was still 5 of 10 from the field. He was still 2 of 3 from 3. He still, looked engaged on both sides of the court. And at halftime, he talked about, like, we got to keep playing this brand of basketball that we've been playing. He's the type of guy where I don't think, he's clearly not looking to overtake whatever this team is doing, and rather wants to plug and play and complement what this group is trying to do. So I think what we've seen from Jaden thus far, I've been really impressed with. I think, if I were to give fans, like any caution, or, it's just continued patience, because it could be until New Year's that he's in the starting lineup, or there's a potential he comes in as a sixth man the entire season. But ultimately, it's about not rocking the boat. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, for lack of better terms. And there's something to be said too about the length like a Duncan Robinson brings to the lineup, and some of the, some of the wingspan that the Pistons have with that current lineup. But all that to be said, Troy, I think it's been encouraging returns thus far. And again, that's why I think there's something to be said about seeing what this group can be as constructed.
Yeah, I think those are excellent points. And I think for me, like definitely slower. You can tell he's not Jaden Ivey, but he's also like not like super far regressed negatively, right? I mean, he's going in there, he's having high production, he's making buckets, he's making good plays on the offensive end, and getting used to, right? Getting back into what it means to play the pace of an NBA game. That's not going to just be there 100% on the snap of a fingers, even if he's feeling ready to play. But yeah, I mean, the fact that he had, what did he have, 11 points tonight?
Yep.
Just the ability to come in the game and to score like that, and still finding your rhythm as far as not just your shot selection or anything like that, but your rhythm as far as just your intangibles of just getting back out there. Yeah, I'm there's nothing that I'm upset about or pessimistic about with his return.
Yeah, and about in about 26 minutes thus far, Jaden Ivey has 21 points. So pretty darn good. And he was 66% from the field in his first game. He was 50% from the field in the second game.
Yeah.
So
some of those layups, I think just he hadn't shot some of those layups, with
that was rust.
High contested, right? Rust, I think, is a good way of putting it. So if that rust can get off, I mean, then he's shooting what? I mean, he's shooting 7 for 10. So that's 70%.
Yeah. Yep. I think there's a lot to like, from what he's done. I think my question is what they're going to do with this rotation that they have, just because there is a very finite amount of minutes as it is. You talk about the fact that at some point we could be having Marcus Sasser return already in this game against in Indiana. We saw Dennis Jenkins' minutes get shrunk down to 8 minutes this game, which in part, I think that's because Karis LeVert was having a really good game. I think in part, it was kind of matchup based, but quite frankly, I hope we don't see that as a trend. I think that I hope that's a fluke, because Dennis Jenkins has been really good for this team. And even with Jaden Ivey coming back in the lineup, I still think that having Jenkins on the court should be a priority.
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't really much of a sample size tonight. I mean, yeah, he had 8 minutes, but he wasn't all over the court like Ron Holland was in just his 11, right? So, but yeah, I mean,
good plays though. Like he had 3 assists. He had that block against Jay Huff.
Yeah, that was awesome. That block was sick. But yeah, I mean, looking at the past, 3 or 4 games, he's really been on a high stretch. And, I think we talked last podcast about, of course, the game against the Wizards that they were able to squeeze out there at the end. And, it's games like that where he has proved himself that he has a place in the NBA, that
Chicago game especially.
Right. Yeah. Chicago game as well. He has a place on an NBA roster. So the fact that in my opinion, he's made that statement already. You want those minutes to be there, especially because you definitely need. I mean, how many minutes did Cade play tonight? I would have guessed 35.
36.
36. So I was close.
Yeah, pretty close.
Right. If there's some games where you can, for rest purposes or whatever, limit that to 28, 29 minutes a night, that makes Jenkins' minutes go up too. So you definitely want to utilize that in a long-term 82-game season. You want to utilize a guy like Jenkins that can come in to really contribute when your other guys need a breather.
Mm-hmm. Now, I do want to clarify and kind of round back to some of the discussion we were just having a minute ago about trades, because I'm not saying that this team shouldn't make any moves at all. I don't think this team should make any core foundational changes to their nucleus. Like, if anything, I think they should make a move around the margins, specifically finding a way to convert Dennis Jenkins from a 2-way to a standard contract. They could also potentially, if for whatever reason, if all of a sudden the FBI just goes, good news, Malik, you can go back to playing basketball, like obviously free up a roster spot to bring him back into the fold. If there's an opportunity to go and get a shooter or, like someone that provides like additional spacing, that's like a second unit player without giving up any major assets, then I think that's something that the Pistons can look into. But the reality of it is they have like 4+ picks right now that they can trade in the future. They have, guys like Jaden Ivey, Ron Holland, Chaz Lanier kind of like in their disposal as like their quote unquote chips. And this isn't OKC. Like they don't have like 12 picks in every year's draft, or they don't have a wheelbarrow of assets. But what they do have is inherently valuable. And so that's why I think there's something to be said about you can go and improve the depth of this team, improve the shooting of this team, but get through this season without touching that stockpile, because it is a lot easier to make foundational moves when other teams are also figuring out their salary cap situation, when other teams are also going into the draft and making different changes. Does that make sense, Troy? Do you agree with me?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And we've seen teams do that in the past too. And I think that's what makes the offseason move so exciting, is because it's, all 30 teams to some degree, even your high contenders or your previous champion, are figuring out too, okay, what does the roster need to look like next year, right? 29 out of 30 teams did not win the championship, and 29 out of those 30 teams want to be competitive, or at least be more competitive than they were in the previous season. So yeah, you definitely want to do that and to see, where other teams are at. But, Sean, kind of looking at that, and of course, I don't think any Pistons fans is expecting fully a foundational move to happen in February at the trade deadline. But is there any type of player right now, again, I know I'm not talking about like a Jaren Jackson Jr., that's totally a foundational game changer, but is there any smaller, 6-man rotation kind of player that you think could be a type of player, not maybe him exactly, but a type of player that could really help the Pistons as far as depth and rotation that could become available into the trade deadline?
So not saying this specific player, although I wouldn't particularly mind this specific player if I'm being honest. But if you can go get yourself a DeMar DeRozan type player, like a veteran who is like a seasoned scorer, someone I would honestly want someone who's a little bit of a better shooter. I know people bring up Zach LaVine, but I'm sorry. Once Zach LaVine had a contract that pays him $40+ million in this NBA, I ain't touching that. I honestly, and in general, just how things have been going in Sacramento, I'd be hesitant to touch any Sacramento King right now. But having said that, someone of that ilk, even, like let's say the Clippers decide for whatever reason that they need to, like kind of strip things down to the studs. If like a Bogdanovich became available, and like, potentially, we've seen him, like improve after getting a fresh start and getting out of a toxic situation. He's someone, who's old enough, who knows his role, is a decent 3-point shooter and a competent enough defensive player. So he's someone to me that would certainly be interesting as well. It's also hard to project as of today, because a lot can happen between now and the February trade deadline. And I'm going to be curious to see which teams are still continuing to try to get better and which teams are going to be fully throwing themselves into this tankathon, because I'm not sure if you've seen any clips of AJ DeBanza or Carlos Boozer's son, or any of these other guys in this class, Troy, but like we have another special class incoming. And I tweeted this out like a week ago, but I firmly stand by it. I think we're about to see teams do some disgusting things to put themselves in position to get as high as possible in this draft.
Yeah, and that's a good problem to have in the NBA, Sean, because not to knock on other leagues. I mean, we follow NFL and we follow baseball.
It's been awful this year.
Right. But the thing is that the talent that the NBA is producing is just incredible. I mean,
And
these
the
young
global
guys
talent.
coming into the league, and it's not just one or two guys. I mean, the depth of your first round has gotten incredible. And every year, you see a second round pick, really make some teams have some deep regret. But I just love the state of the league right now.
I mean, just since 2020, we've had guys like Anthony Edwards, Cade Cunningham, Paolo Banchero, Victor Wembanyama, Cooper Flagg, Scotty Barnes. Like, I know I'm missing guys in here that are VJ Edgecombe. You're muted. But
and that's 5 years ago. Imagine if you that's 5 years ago to today. Imagine what you take from today to 5 years from now.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. And yeah, we're just the level of talent, even we're not even talking about like guys like Derek Queen who have been awesome this year. We keep talking about VJ Edgecombe on this podcast. We will continue to talk about him. I am not sorry about it whatsoever. That guy's freaking awesome. I mean, even Con Kneppel with the Hornets is a stud. Like, there's just Cooper Flagg is starting to look like the guy that was advertised. Turns out when you don't have the fans crying for your GM to be fired at every game, you can actually kind of have fun. Who knew?
Who knew, John?
Yeah. Couple other things we gotta address before we wrap up this pod, Troy. What the hell does Ja Morant think he is? Like, specifically, if you haven't seen it, which you have, but if you haven't, if you're listening this deep into the pod, you've seen it. But if you haven't seen it somehow, Ja Morant the other night after Memphis got the win against the Dallas Mavericks, I believe it was in Dallas. Ja was in street clothes as he usually has been over the course of his career, and he essentially called Klay Thompson a bum. And after the game, Klay, he essentially said it's funny for a guy who does a lot of talking that doesn't take any accountability. And also about how he's a guy who is so much more caught up in all the nonsense off the court than he is in playing on the court, which, I mean, absolute bars. And it's like, dude, quite frankly, it's like if Jason Maxiell went after Kevin Garnett. It's like, brother, who do you think you are? Like this is the Aldi brand Derrick Rose going after the second greatest shooter in the history of basketball, 4-time champion, one guy who's a surefire Hall of Famer, and a guy who they might not even let get a ticket at the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. And not just is Klay Thompson a good basketball player, but he's been a really great staple for the NBA in general. And Ja Morant isn't either, right? I mean, yeah, he had a couple of great seasons. We've seen a great flash of athleticism and ability, but here's the key word in that: flash. We haven't seen it pan out throughout his career. And you look at the state of the Memphis Grizzlies itself right now. I mean, Sean, if you're a Grizzlies fan, your stock is much more in Triple J than it is in him. And even that, you have some identity crisis. So with that, I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Troy.
I don't know. It's unfortunate because, this was a guy who just 2-3 short years ago was a really fun player to watch. And he just hasn't had it together ever since, the gun incidents and all that.
Yep. Let's play a game. This game's called Guess Ja's 3-point percentage.
For the season or career?
For the season.
For the season. I'm going to guess 25.
17%. He's taking 5 a game, and he's making less than 1. And he's shooting he's shooting the least amount of shots at the rim that he has throughout his entire career. Mind you, he's shooting less at the rim while becoming a worse jump shooter. And here's another stat. Ever since Clay's come back from the Achilles in the ACL injury, he's played in over 160 games. You know how many Jaws played in that same time span?
39.
71.
Oh, wow.
Clay, even with all the injuries, still played in over twice the amount of games. And Clay's the bum? At this point, if you pull out a dictionary and pull up the word bum, it's going to show a picture of Ja Morant.
And it's such a shame because that 2019 draft class, the two players that we were most hype about was Zion and Ja. And not only that, I think everyone knew that Zion had the higher ceiling than Ja. I mean, Zion was everything. But, I mean, Ja was the better, probably talented player going into that draft. And the fact
he was the safer pick for sure.
Right. And the fact that those two are not in conversation when we think of, the stars of the league, we are not bringing those two names up when we thought that they would be the face of the 2020s.
The only time their teams are ever in discussions now in league news, it's about which teams are in danger of being relegated and being relocated.
And a lot has to do with their stars' performances or lack of.
Yep. I heard a really good summary of the Memphis Grizzlies today on a podcast. I don't know if this was the exact phrasing, but I think this just sums up where they're at perfectly. It used to be the grit and grind Grizzlies. Now it's the bitch and whine Grizzlies.
I mean, not wrong.
Where's the lie? That's the question there. Where's the lie? And again, it's just, man, just absolutely brutal stuff. But another thing that's kind of brutal is that I have to come on here and eat crow about a team that I was very critical on for a long time, because the second best team in the Eastern Conference right now is the Toronto Raptors, coming off of their 8th win in a row. Scotty Barnes is starting to look more and more like the two-way star that Masai Ujiri wanted him to be when he drafted him with the 4th overall pick. Troy, I gotta hand it to him, man. Scotty, BI, and rest of the crew, they're putting together a pretty interesting campaign. And might I say, Toronto's low-key become my favorite Anthony Davis destination.
Wow. Holy smokes. Really?
I mean, Troy, what do they have to lose? This is Toronto. They don't get stars. And if you think about like the group that they have, like they can move around some of the expenses. You throw a healthy Anthony Davis on the court with these guys. I know there's a big asterisk there, but think of the length, you think of the scoring, you think of the pace they can push. I'm just saying. Yeah, I think it's interesting.
Now the hard thing would be getting him, just because, like, I mean, it's a little different than the Pistons, because you have a lot more movable players that you'd be comfortable with on Toronto. But like, I don't know, like Emmanuel Quickly, it has played pretty well this season. He's a guy that I don't know. I might want to keep around for another year.
He's been good, but like, brother, if we're saying I don't know about getting Anthony Davis because I want to keep Emmanuel Quickly, then with all due respect, what's the conversation.
Right. I guess I didn't think that one through before I said it.
It's like, LeBron, we've got Ben Simmons. We're fine. Anthony Davis, we've got Emmanuel quickly.
All I'm saying is they have some younger guys that have contributed a lot to their win column this year.
And all you're saying is fate of the universe on the line. Give you Iguodala.
You got it.
Your point's definitely valid though, in the sense of they have a lot of young talent, and it's almost similar to Detroit in the sense of you don't really want to rock the boat. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. However, this Detroit team, I think one thing that you would have to consider is this Detroit team's had a little bit more time together, so there's kind of like more of a chemistry that they would be breaking up than Toronto would be. But on top of that, you have some pieces here in Toronto where it might benefit you to move off of them sooner rather than later. Like specifically, like if Toronto can upgrade the Jakob Poeltl spot, I think that's a win for them because he's a big who's already approaching 31. Mm-hmm. They have other guys on this team where just in my opinion, they don't necessarily fit the timeline. And although I agree that Emmanuel Quickley has been good for them, I don't know if Emmanuel Quickley has been $32.5 million a year good for them. And if you're able to potentially use that as a salary to come in and acquire, someone like that, then I think it makes sense. And I mean, the other thing, oh my God, I didn't realize, I knew they extended him. I didn't realize it was like this. They literally, they gave Jakob Poeltl, they're paying this guy into 2030, and they're going to be paying him almost $30 million a year.
You might want to move off of that contract.
That's the thing, man. There's just a lot of bad contracts in Toronto. Whereas Detroit, they kept a lot of flexibility. They've signed a lot of short-term deals. Toronto, it's been like Oprah, dude. It's like you get a contract, you get 50 million, you get 30 million. Y'all are getting paid. Like that is what is happening there, man.
Yeah. But, obviously that was such a fun finals run in 2019. I shouldn't say finals run, championship run in 2019. And I don't know.
They didn't pay any of the guys from 2019.
No. I'm changing. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying Toronto Raptors being relevant.
Right. For sure.
It would be fun to watch that same organization have some relevancy.
And just saying, when was the last time the Raptors were in relevancy? When they went and traded for a star.
Yeah, there you go.
So I'm just saying, and listen, it's a lot easier for me to say, Toronto, go be reckless when I have zero ties, zero affiliation or emotional investment in what the Toronto Raptors do. It's a lot easier for me to say, hey, go out there and make the move that we don't want to make here in Detroit. But at the same time, I think if you look at their roster situation, there's some reasons why Anthony Davis move would make a little bit more sense for them than it would for like a Detroit. I think the other team that makes more sense than Detroit, and I think the other team that's kind of been talked about a lot, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as a potential Anthony Davis situation, and maybe this is the one that really makes the most sense, is the Chicago Bulls. Because Anthony Davis, he's from Chicago. The Bulls, obviously, they've been pretty competitive, but at the same time, they've kind of come back down to earth a little bit. If you look at where they're at in the standings, they're kind of right in the middle in that hodgepodge with the Sixers and the Knicks and the Magic. They're at 9-7. So they're, if you're talking about a team that could potentially be in a position to capitalize off wherever the East is, that could potentially be the Bulls. But at the same time, if you look at like what this team was pre-November 4th versus what they've been post-November 4th, it's way different realities.
Right. I was going to say, I mean, they already have some questions, I think, of, where their organization is headed. And I feel like getting an AD, I mean, you're really locking in on a player like him, but at the same time, how many good years left does he have in the tank? And then you're royally screwed I assume you have to throw in picks and things like that, to get that. And it would be a certainly win now move. That's for darn sure. But would it be the right move? I don't know. I
Well,
actually
okay,
kind of
but
like
Troy,
Toronto.
but all right, but here's my counter. Here's my question with the Bulls. What else would they do? Seriously, what else? Because
Yeah.
if they stay packed, if they finish out this season, I'll tell you what this team is. They're a 38 to 43 win team that will be bounced by the Miami Heat in the play-in. Because come hell or high water, that's what happens every year. This team, they go on stretches, they make you believe, they give you some hope, and then they face the Miami Heat or the Atlanta Hawks in the play-in tournament. Or both.
Yeah.
And then they're home by April. And whereas here, even if it goes spectacularly in flames, which let's be honest, Troy, 80% of trades that are made in this league are failures.
Yeah.
They're all like a lot of them don't work. But we've seen before, think of it this way. This could be the Blake Griffin trade for the Bulls.
Sure.
Where you could potentially get a year or two of really good basketball. Who knows? Maybe get some playoff moments. Maybe get some excitement in the United Center that they haven't had for someone in a Bulls uniform since Derrick Rose came back. And then, who knows? Maybe in a year or two, yeah, it's a bad contract. But you know what? That would actually give the Bulls some clarity. Didn't mean to do that, but I mean, it kind of helped emphasize the point.
Out of all the times you've corrected me or challenged a different opinion, I think you've sold me the most on that one right there.
It's like, yeah, because it's like, what do the Bulls really have to lose?
Can you see any other stars becoming available this year, Sean?
Ooh, good question. I mean, I definitely think John Morant's gonna be a player that they want to shop, but I don't think that's gonna happen. I think when you look at throughout the rest of the league, I mean, I don't think the LaMelo tweet was nothing about him being potentially on the market.
Yeah.
Especially with Charlotte just kind of still really they suck. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. They suck. I mean, I imagine Lauri Markkanen is someone that Utah would love to really cash in on, but with the asking price they just seem to continue to have for him, I just don't see him getting traded. Otherwise, I still think there's a lot of season left to be played. There's a lot of things left to develop, but I think right now, I think it's kind of your obvious candidates, your Anthony Davises of the world. I will say one guy to keep an eye on, because I'm really interested to see what is Dallas going to do with Kyrie Irving. Because on one hand, I think Dallas they have a very tricky situation here. Because the last thing they can afford to do is piss their fans off again, even further. And Kyrie has very quickly become a beloved player in Dallas. But on the other hand, after this upcoming season, after their draft pick that they have here after this upcoming year, they don't own a draft pick again until 2031, 2032 in the first round. And yes, you could potentially have Kyrie as this great mentor, as this leader, as this, as this skillful player to have alongside your young players. And he can kind of be your vet that brings guys into the seats. But at the same time, I think whoever gets that job in Dallas has to really be asking themselves, are we really leaving a lot on the table here just because we don't want to hurt some fans' feelings?
Mm-hmm. Man, in literally a span of 11 months, that organization looks a heck of a lot different than it did 11 months ago. And
it's falling apart, and it's all self-inflicted.
And they're going to have to do some serious things. But also, you have to look at now Cooper Flagg's longevity and tenure in a Dallas Mavericks uniform. I mean, he's only a rookie, but you still have to be making decisions and thinking now about what players am I going to put around him to blossom.
I mean, that has to be the direction going forward. I think the second the Dallas Mavericks are making decisions about anything that is not in the best interest of Cooper Flagg is when they completely lost the plot again. And I think that's why you've seen Patrick Dumont welcome like Mark Cuban back into the fold. I think that's why you've seen them really kind of pause and take a moment to reflect here, because if there's something like, you know, we've clearly seen this new owner in Dallas doesn't know a whole lot about basketball. Well, you know what billionaires know a lot about? The money that comes into their accounts and the money that goes out. And they could see a graph where all the ticket sales, merchandise sales, revenue is going down. They understand how that's bad for business.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But Troy, you know what's good for business?
From Half Court Podcast.
Hitting that subscribe button of the From Half Court Podcast. You don't miss any of the content, but also be sure you like the video if you did enjoy, so that this helps recommend other Pistons fans to the content that we have. But also, be sure you follow myself on X at Sean Half Court, as well as on Substack, the From Half Court Substack. We're doing more articles there as well. Be sure you follow Troy at Troy44 if you want any more of his random occasional basketball thoughts that he'll just sprinkle in there. They're really fun. Let me see, just for the heck of it, what was Troy's last tweet?
Last basketball tweet. Probably something weird.
Yeah, last basketball tweet. I mean, there's some retweets on here. There's some really random stuff. I'm trying to see the original last Troy Sergey tweet.
Probably have to scroll down quite a bit.
It was legitimately, it was May 1st after the Pistons got eliminated. You know what you said?
What I say?
We will be back. Which that's kind of perfect, because we will be back next week on From Half Court. Be sure you're subscribed.